Welcome to the 5 a.m. grind. Horace, what's up, man?
Nothing much. What's up with you?
It's good. It's good. How's your week going so far?
It's going all right. Can't complain.
Yeah?
Weather's nice. The malls and everything have opened up, so it feels a little bit awkward kind of going through everything, and the traffic's there. Traffic in the morning is getting worse every day, which...
It's getting worse and worse.
Yeah, which I guess that's good and bad. It's good that the economy's opening up, but bad, I hate it. I know during COVID, when the lockdown, I could get to work in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Door to door 15.
Yeah.
Now it's like 30, 40 minutes. That's how much like traffic slows you down.
I was grabbing lunch with my brother.
Yeah.
Last week. And we're like, same thing. It was, let's budget 20 minutes. And then it took us 45 minutes to get there. And you're like, okay, I guess, gotta budget the old way, back the way we did in 2019. Yeah, interesting stuff. I also went back to the gym this week.
Yeah? How'd that go?
It was good. It's like, to be honest with you, I was a bit afraid of going just because of, the washing, and people cleaning the equipment, sanitizing, all that stuff. But it was good. I usually go early in the mornings, so it's pretty quiet then. So worked out okay.
I started going. I went a couple times, and
you go to the gym?
Hard to believe. I had to start going, man. I started putting on some unwanted weight,
some COVID pounds.
yeah. So I started going, and I went like morning, evening. Whenever I go, it's pretty much empty.
Yeah,
there's nobody around. But I was paranoid too, so I wipe everything before and after. Half the time I'm there, I'm wiping stuff down.
I'm doing the exact same. All right, so I thought for this week's podcast, we talk about something that I've always suspected, difference between Canada and the U.S., and that is wanted to compare entrepreneurship in Canada versus our neighbors to the south, so versus the U.S. Wanted to answer 3 questions today. So number 1, why does it seem like the U.S. has more entrepreneurs than Canada? Or why does it look like the U.S. is more entrepreneurial than Canada? Number 2, is it because of a cultural difference between Canada and the U.S.? And number 3, if Canada is indeed less entrepreneurial than the U.S., how could Canada become more entrepreneurial?
Yeah,
okay?
Valid.
All right, so someone apologize. Question number 1. Why does it seem like the U.S. is more entrepreneurial than Canada? And I guess when I'm asking this question, I'm already assuming that the U.S. is more entrepreneurial than Canada. But is that the case, do you think? And why?
Yeah, I would definitely think so. I think that good or bad, there is that exceptional culture where Americans do think that they're exceptional, and that kind of gives them the confidence to be like, yo, I deserve more, or I want this, or I want that. And I just feel like part of that is they're starting their own businesses, and they just have that culture. You got that VC culture wherever you go. I mean, yeah, you could say Silicon Valley is known for tech culture, but like New York has a crazy tech culture. You have all these other hubs around, right? The states, Washington State has a tech culture. Yeah. Now Florida is investing heavily in tech culture.
Yeah,
right? Texas is. So as these other startups migrate over there. So I think that there's just an overall, like, I feel like you just, in the States, you start your own business. And there's a lot of, I feel like, not just the mindset of the entrepreneur, but there's different consumer mindsets.
Yeah.
So, for example, now Canada is slowly changing, I feel like. But I felt like when we were in undergrad, 10, 15, 20 years ago, whenever, right? Nobody's tried small shops to go eat, right? There wasn't a lot of small delis that everybody's like, okay, I'm going to go there.
There's a lot of chains.
Yeah. Everybody was kind of like, okay, no matter how garbage the chain was, people were like, yo, I went to this chain, all right? and they didn't give you good food, and they charged you too much, and it was just our expectations was very low, whereas I felt like you go to the States, there's a lot of like delis in the corner and all that stuff because people want to go out and they'll try new things or whatever it is, and they'll get attached to smaller businesses. And so then that creates, there's like a, I guess, feedback loop, right? Because people are willing to do that. More entrepreneurs are willing to start their own businesses, right? And as more entrepreneurs start their own businesses, there's more variety and more people willing to try those things. So it kind of goes back. Whereas over here, not that many are trying to start, right? Because you have to snap people out of the concept of, okay, get away from the chains. And then because there's not a lot of people willing to go there, there's not a lot of entrepreneurs willing to start. And then just kind of, and then there's less choice, so then you're less willing to go to a random whatever store.
Yeah, yeah. The U.S., though, like you mentioned, tech startups, it's more than that as well, I feel like, in terms of just entrepreneurship. It just seems like, and I guess this will sort of answer the second question as well, whether or not it's a cultural difference, and I believe it is. The U.S. has a couple of things that are quite unique to it. Number one, it's like a very capitalistic country, right? It's like what's that quote about evolution? It's like every man for himself.
Yeah.
Very much like that. They try to do away with a lot of social systems that Canada has, or even European countries have. It's very much pro-business, right? So a lot of like even politicians are like, we're here to help businesses because they create jobs. Even though that might not be true. Those jobs are like in China or something. They're like, no, we want to create jobs because these people bring tax revenue to our country. So therefore, we're going to be very friendly to corporations. It's quite interesting that is. And I don't know, there's something about the whole American dream thing that drives people to become entrepreneurs in the U.S. More so than Canada.
Entrepreneurs and just more willing to work, to be honest.
Work harder.
Yes.
That's interesting.
And I'll give you, and I'm not a Republican by any means,
no.
right?
No,
but there's certain things now, or certain things, or like you could say a conservative, right?
Yeah.
For Canadians. There's certain things now that as I get older, I kind of understand, not maybe completely agree.
Right.
But I feel like there is an element of truth where before I'd be like, all of this is nonsense. So one of the things was like, something that the Republicans would say if you ever looked at the politics in the States was that Democrats would just want to give out handouts, right?
Yeah.
Where the States has like a interesting, I guess, set of ingredients in their employment culture and all of that, where, for example, first thing is at-will hiring. So in the States, you can hire and fire as you please, no consequences. There is nothing there. In Canada, you can't do that. You have rights vested in your job once you're hired full time. So you need severance, and there's all these other things, and so it's easier if like an employer can't just fire somebody and not have any kind of ramifications. At the least, you'll have some kind of severance, right?
Yeah.
So that makes you think a couple of times before you hire people, because you don't want more problems, right? You're more conservative. Whereas like, hey, listen, I'll hire somebody. If I can't hold them on to them, I'm going to drop them, right? Whether my business drops, whether that person's not good, you know what I mean? Even if your business needs it, you're still thinking like, okay, well, what if this person's just trouble, right?
Yeah.
So you're thinking twice. There's those elements there. So then now if I want to grow big, where is it going to be more conducive? Like where is that business more willing to go? Well, in the States, okay, well, clearly, because I can just hire somebody. If I mess up, that's fine. I fire that person and I keep going. You know what I mean? And people could be like, oh my God, you're just using somebody, whatever. Well, at least you hired somebody and spent some money for some amount of time as opposed to no amount of time, right? Because I'm thinking about it, whatever. So that's one end. The other end is, and I feel like this is huge, is a healthcare end, right? Healthcare. In Canada, you have public healthcare. In the States, you have private. So a lot of times, you're almost like forced to work so that you have some kind of insurance and that you're covered and you can go to the doctor.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of is good and bad. Good, I guess good as in it gets people like, okay, I got to work. Whereas over here, you may be enticed to just be a little bit lazy because like, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? Everything is pretty much covered.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's funny because I would think if you have free healthcare in a country, that should encourage you to take more risks because your healthcare, at least you don't need to save up for it like the way it is in the U.S. In the U.S., you could have a massive healthcare bill. How would you pay for it? You need the money.
Yeah.
You would think that's a less... So it allows you to take less risks.
Yeah, so you'd be forced to... Here's the thing. So then now you need healthcare.
Yeah.
Right? Healthcare, and you can be fired without any kind of penalty to the employer. You're going to want to impress your employer.
Yeah.
you're gonna want to put in the time,
Yeah.
right? And people will be like, "Oh no, that's horrible," because you're putting people in situations they don't want to be in, right? Well, if they don't want to be in that situation, why are they still getting paid twice as much as Canadians? Right? So if they were cornered into something,
Yeah.
right, they would be like I would assume, wouldn't it be safe to assume that they'd be getting paid less than Canadians because Canadians have whatever, like other options. They don't want to come to work there. But I feel like with that, that's just the employer element that kind of incentivizes employees to work. But then the employees themselves are like, whoa, you know what? My dream is to run off and start my own business, right? That's another thing. So then the employers are like, we have to get to a point where we're attracting the right talent, right? You price talent. You don't pay people just for the kindness of whatever they're doing, right? You price people out. So then, and people are like, oh my God, US is a bigger market. That's like BS to me. Because a lot of people be like, oh, the salaries are bigger in the States because it's a bigger country, more people. I'm like, well, there's no one person in New York that's working for all of like the states or in California or Texas. They're working for like regional markets. Those markets are as big as freaking Toronto. Toronto and Chicago, there's virtually no difference in the amount of people and the economy, yet the salaries are still bigger down there. Wow.
They are.
We're identical. We're sister cities.
Yeah.
We're the same thing, but they're twice as much.
That's always an issue that's made me like think twice about why salaries are so low in Canada. It's really confusing because it's not like Toronto is exactly a cheap city to live in. It's very expensive. But salaries here, you're right, are considerably lower in the US than the US. Like if I was asked whether I worked in finance or even in tech right now, would you move to the US for more money? Like that's usually a huge incentive for you to move to the US. I mean, I'm tied down to Toronto because my family lives here. But if that wasn't the case, I would go to the US too. Like for sure. You get paid way more for the same job.
I mean, Chicago, dude, they get paid twice as much and their expenses are half as much, man.
It's not as expensive as Toronto.
The cheapest city. Yeah,
it's really messed up.
So it's like it's a no-brainer, man.
Yeah.
Right? So so it's like, I think it's a culture. And the culture where it begins is, I feel like Canadians need to take ownership, right? Canadians need to, like, because a lot of people in Canada are simply like, hey, well, in the States, you get paid more for the same amount of work. Well, okay, well, then we need enough Canadians wanting to quit working, period, go start their own business. When there is not enough talent in the talent pool, you're automatically going to see salaries rise. They're not going to rise because, you know, now your boss is charging their clients more. They don't care about that, right? They care about, okay, I need a person who can do A, B, and C. What's that going to cost me? Right? What's the cheapest way to get that? Right? And that's what they're going to go for.
Yeah, interesting. Do you think just taking risk-taking alone, just that aspect of the difference between the two cultures, it seems like the U.S. is way more risk-taking than we are, right? Yeah. Why do you think that is? Is it just because, like I do have some stats here, and like there is a couple of indexes that classify countries by ease of becoming an entrepreneur. So like the Global Entrepreneurship Index in the U.S. is like 83, which is the best across the entire world. Again, there was another study done by Startup Link, some other website. It's based in Switzerland. It was ranking a lot of North American cities. Toronto was ranked 11 behind some U.S. cities and just countries in general. The U.S. is first, the U.K. second, and then Canada's like third. If we just look at corporate income tax rates, funny enough, the corporate tax rate in the U.S. is like 21%. Canada is actually lower at 15%, and then at 9% if you're a small business. So I don't know. Corporate taxes are definitely higher. But why is it that the U.S. people are willing to take more risks, do you think?
I would say it's culture. I mean, there's that legal stuff, but it's just culture too. I feel like your business school, man. Like when you went to business school, where was majority of the people going into?
They're becoming employees.
Yeah, but they're also going into accounting.
Yes.
So even the ones who were working, right? I think 80%.
Yes. Were
going into accounting.
Yeah, I hope that's not the case now. But certainly when we graduated, it was.
And we were top tier. Dude,
I don't know if I was top tier, man.
No, but top tier schools in the U.S. Right. Are not touching accounting. Yeah. What they're doing is they're kind of like settling for it is a management consulting firm.
Correct. Right? Yeah.
Like McKinsey, BCG, Bain, Deloitte. You know what? You tried, but that's what you got. Over here, it was like a dream to kind of get into that.
It would definitely
Right?
was.
And a lot of people didn't even know what it was. Right? People didn't have that concept. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't have a concept of that until I got to move to the States, and I'm like, oh, everybody really knows what they're doing from the beginning, and they've trained for this for their entire life.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. That's interesting because you did do school in the U.S.
Yeah.
How was that different than Canada? People
People
like
just
your
knew
graduating class.
People knew what was going on. One of the things was I felt, and maybe I don't know if this is a difference between business school and law school.
Yeah.
And I don't want to just like kind of be like, oh my God, Canada is bad, whatever. I loved our school, right? To be honest, there was a lot of positions. Like we used to have a lot of parties or whatever it was, gatherings or social events where people got comfortable socializing, all that stuff. So I do believe that was something that they did well, right? But I don't know whether it was the type of crowd that was there, and it's probably within Canada, the culture, right? But in the States, people are just more on top of things.
Yeah.
They just knew what was going on, right? This is what I want. This is what I want. This is what I should do. There, whatever it is. The professors, that's the other thing. I don't know if this. I feel like it would help. In Canada, like everything, like all your professors are PhDs. They're academics. In the States, you had a lot of like working professionals. It's not for somebody to become an adjunct professor. It's not that huge of a deal in the States. Here, it's near impossible.
Wow. Okay.
So then you're not getting that free flow of like ideas coming in.
Yeah.
Right? And what you should be doing, what's happening in the marketplace. You're looking at guys who are very academic, which is good in its own place, but that can't be the only thing. That's my opinion, at least.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. How do you think, so going to that last question then, how do you think Canada could become more entrepreneurial? Is it something we're doing wrong in the schools? Is it something, a change in attitude? Is it just...
I don't know. Let me ask you that, like, because we've both gotten entrepreneurial now in our careers.
Yes.
Right? What made you change your mind from before, and what could have been done to you to have that done earlier?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I think there comes the point in your career where you're like, you know what? Okay, this career thing is just not for me. I want to become an entrepreneur and just work for myself. Sometimes it's because you're in your career, you kind of hit a bit of a ceiling and you're like, okay, if I want to keep moving on, I either have to stay in the hopes of being promoted eventually, or I go carve out my own path. I think maybe now the attitude amongst a lot of the graduating class maybe has changed. Like, I don't know what it's like in school now. Maybe there is, a lot of people are looking at Silicon Valley like, yeah, I want to go ahead and do that. I have noticed one thing. A lot of Canadian graduates are going to the U.S. to start their careers. Yeah. Which, again, we're losing talent to the U.S. just because, because of that risk-taking culture, the entrepreneurial culture, etc. I think what could have been done differently in school is... maybe just showing other paths and making it acceptable that, look, you might graduate, you might work on something, it doesn't work out, but that's okay. Like, that's considered pretty cool as well. Yeah,
because I don't feel like when you get to Harvard Business School or whatever it is that you're graded like we were at Schulich.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that's one of the things. Then you're like kind of scared of failing. Your mind is geared towards something else for 4 years.
It is.
Right?
It is indeed.
So it's not about the best solution. It's not about getting back, getting beat down and getting back up. It's a completely different situation. It's like, I got to figure out how to just get ahead of my cohort, and whether like whatever things you use to employ doing that, you do just to get ahead.
Yeah. Right? I do like the point that you made, when we started this. In Canada, we have a lot of respect for institutions and just brand names in general and big names, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like that respect is a lot less in the U.S. It's a lot more acceptable for you to be like, yeah, I'm working for myself. Here's my company. I'm working for this little company. This is what it's called. This is what they do. Yeah. It's a lot more acceptable to hear that in the U.S. than it is in Canada. In Canada, I feel like you're either working for 4 banks, 4 insurance companies, 3 grocers, or 3 telecom companies.
That's 100%.
That's the entire country, basically. Yeah. Right? And a few oil and gas companies. It's kind of it. It's kind of it. You either work at these humongous companies in Canada, otherwise you're working for someone nobody's heard of. And people are like kind of embarrassed sometimes when you show them that.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of weird how that exists. in Canada?
I feel like in Canada also there's like in the States, because there's a lot of small businesses that are starting, there's a lot of other businesses that work off the top of that. You have other consulting firms, all these other firms. Like how many regional mid-sized consulting firms do you find in Canada? You don't.
You don't any. Yeah.
That you hear of.
Because you've always told me this too. You're like, oh, Ali, like here, like some of the elite law firms are going after like the smallest businesses,
In Canada,
right?
in Canada.
Which I find such an interesting dynamic.
I find it so surprising some of the work that the white shoe firms in Toronto are getting.
Right.
Whereas I don't think in the States, the big firms would not want to touch them.
Yeah.
Right? And the startups and whatever, the businesses wouldn't want to touch the big firms either, because there'd be so many other good choices that are fit for them in their life cycle as a business that it makes no sense. Like they just don't gel. You know what I mean? They're not good for one another. Over here, it's like, yo, I don't know. I'm surprised often enough when I see certain startups working on the type of projects with certain firms.
Right.
Yeah. Not to say that just the legal side of this. I'm not saying that there's poor service.
Yeah.
They could get perfectly wonderful service. I don't know what kind of service they're getting. I'm talking about just the economics and the business side of things, right? Mm-hmm. And I think over there it's the same thing. Like there's just people are willing to start their own firms right away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
law firms. I think in Canada you still have a little bit of that. So the thing is within Canada it's a bit different. You do have lawyers starting their own firms, but the type of law that they practice may not be the most nuanced or complicated. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have that many one-man shops that are creating multi-jurisdictional incorporations to like save you on taxes and like make sure that everything kind of runs smoothly and your bylaws and everything are right. So you're not going to have a lot of that. Whereas in the States, you can have like a one-man law firm, like lawyer would be like, all right, I'll figure this out. Okay. And then, I mean, they have it figured that out and they'll figure it out for you. Over here, I'm not saying Canadians don't, but there's not as much. Mm-hmm. Right. So that's why when I do see like the tax structure, the legal structure on the taxing side of Canada, they're very immature.
Yeah. You asked me this question about how, it could have been more entrepreneurial for me when I was sort of going through my career and out of university. What do you think about yourself? Like, how could it be more focused on entrepreneurship? And
I agree with what you said. Like, it's exposure.
Yeah,
that's one thing. The other thing is that like, it's a company you keep, and also some of the company you keep, some of it like it's just there. I think growing up, there's a huge push even from family just to get a job. Being immigrant parents and stuff like that, get a job, and it was like businesses, and I think it's just culture too, where like making mistakes is not a good thing.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So that's something that, like, at least for my kids, man, I want them to learn how to like sell something by the time they're 12 years old, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look at like some of the biggest entrepreneurs, they're all sold something when they were young.
They did,
right?
Yeah.
Garbage bags, Coca-Cola, newspaper, whatever it is, right? They're selling something and they're figuring things out. They're trying to figure out like social behavior. They're learning so much, and then they're selling throughout their lives.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about as well, it seems like in Canada the tolerance for failure is a lot lower than it is in the US. I feel like in the US there's this really good quote I like from what's his name? The guy who owns Khosla Ventures. So Vinod Khosla, who's like the founder of Khosla Ventures. So he started a few businesses, Sun Microsystems, etc. He's now a VC. What he said was, he always has this quote. He's like, so one of my successes, Sun Microsystems, but do you know the 3 businesses I started before that failed? Nobody knows what they are. Yeah. And he's like, you see, nobody remembers your failures and nobody cares. Yeah. In Canada, it seems like people care so much about just failing and looking back. There's this image thing. I don't know what it is. It's weird to shake off. The other two things I was going to say is the points that we touched on, and maybe it's worth underscoring them. Number one, salaries are higher in the US than they are in Canada. So you would think when somebody, let's say, is making $200K in the US and $100K in Canada, somebody who's thinking of leaving a job that's paying him $200K would think twice about it. They'd be like, look, this is a lot of money for me to go 200 to 0. That's
people still do.
Yeah, that's a huge decrease. And people still do to start their own businesses. In Canada, the gap is a lot smaller to zero, right? It's just 100K to zero. And then the other thing is, like we just discussed as well, healthcare in Canada is paid for through your taxes. So even if shit hits the fan, you're on whatever, you end up like failing and flaming out, at least you don't have to pay for healthcare. That's free. In the US, you got to cover that.
Yeah.
It's insane.
That's a huge stress, which Canadians don't understand.
Exactly.
Right? Like
exactly.
When I went to law school, there's people who think twice, like, okay, should I go to a doctor? I feel pain or whatever, but it's going to cost me X amount.
Yeah.
Right? Over here, do you think twice before you go into a walk-in clinic?
You just go. You have a small little thing. You just go, okay, I'm just going to go to the clinic and check
So
this
it's
out.
like, and then the other nonsense that people say, it's like, oh, well, if you have more money over there, you're going to be saving more. No, that's not the case. Right?
Yeah.
Over you burn as quickly as you spend it.
Taxes in some states like New York and San Fran are almost the same as they are in Canada. They're pretty damn high, aren't
Pricing is pretty, I mean, the cost of living is pretty high.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what people don't see is, for example, a house may be cheaper in the States, for example, in New York or San Francisco.
Yeah.
But property tax is going to be twice as high.
Right.
Electric bill, everything is twice as high.
You got to save for education. You got to save for healthcare.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, you go to like any kind of decent undergrad over there,
Yeah.
you're coming out with $250,000 in debt.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you go to community college, all that stuff, and people do that, right? Okay, you're at 70, 80, whatever it is, right? And so over here, it's like you have little debt coming out.
Yeah.
Canadians.
Yeah.
Your healthcare is covered.
Yes.
You're not getting paid enough.
Yeah.
You have no reason but to start your own thing.
Yeah.
But
Canadians
Canadians still don't.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we don't. We like sort of the big names, liking for a reputable company, working for an employer. Just very risk averse culture.
Extremely
I find
risk
that
averse.
interesting. Yeah.
And this is the reason why I kind of keep saying this.
Yeah.
Is right now I feel like Canada is a great opportunity to start businesses. There's nobody doing any kind of business. There's nobody doing any kind of competitive business. And I'll tell you one thing, like when it's really competitive, like you look in the States, it's really competitive. And there's different types of business models. Like loss leaders is a concept that is really big in the States.
Yeah.
Where they will like burn money just to get your trust. And then when they got it, then you pay and then like you're going to be with them. In Canada, businesses want to profit from day one. Right? So they don't give you anything for free. They just want to kind of keep your, like they want to make sure that they're profitable. They have their bottom line is hit from day one. The reason, because there's not enough businesses, right? If there's a lot of businesses, it creates competition. It's like Peter Thiel has that, right? Like nobody likes competition because competition is the enemy of profits.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So in Canada, there's great profits. Margins are healthy. We're a margin economy, man. We're a margin economy.
Especially a lot of our big companies, amazing margins, insane and insanely protected.
Yeah. So, and a lot of the e-commerce companies, they're making their profit in Canada more so in the state, more than in the States. Because in the States, it's competitive, man.
It's very competitive.
You like have to like lose money before you earn money. There's a lot of things that are going on. You got to be able to hold. You got to be able to market properly. Everything has to be like kind of half decent. Over here, man, you get up and you'll fall into like a good business.
Yeah. You make it sound really easy. But honestly, it's true. Canadians are okay with like overpaying with stuff. We overpay our banks. We overpay for our cell phone bills, etc., etc., etc. And it almost seems like Canadians are accepting of being screwed all the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
They got no choice. You tell me, okay, do you think that the businesses here, there's good opportunity for people to make decent livelihoods rather than working at corporate head offices?
I think so. Yeah, for sure. For sure. It feels like, again, like I was saying, there are a lot of smart people that are stuck as just working at corporate jobs just because of reputation, lack of risk taking, whatever it is. So the opportunity to start a business is definitely here.
Yeah.
It definitely exists.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know what it is. Maybe, I feel like it's slowly changing. People are becoming a bit more entrepreneurial. You see more startups, etc. But for whatever reason, due to a cultural thing or a mindset thing, I don't know. It seems like we're still behind at the U.S.
Yeah.
Hopefully slowly catching up. Yeah. Any other takeaways on this topic?
That's it, man. We'll leave it to the next podcast.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this discussion of a good comparison between Canada and the U.S.
Take care.
See you guys in the next episode.